So today, last week you looked at what data analysis is. We saw a lot of things under data analysis. And one of the tools we considered last week was Excel. So today, being day 2 of our program, we'll start diving deep into how to use Excel for our data analysis. And then going forward, all we'll be discussing in our class will be how to use Excel to resolve different issues and to solve different problems that will arise as data analysts. So that is why you see that the two analysis, what we're going to use, the two we are looking at today is Excel. And so last week too, I asked you to install Microsoft Office on your computers. And then when you finish installing them, you should install a minimum of 2019 or 2021 Microsoft Office. And someone could ask, how would I know if what I have on my computer is 2016, 2019, or 2021, or 27, or how do I know? Yeah, I intended showing you that last week, but then time wasn't on my side to show you that. But today, let me show you where you will find it, so that subsequent time, if you are looking for where to find the version or what program you're using, you'll be able to know exactly where it is. So let me open Microsoft Excel, and then I'll open Microsoft Excel. So this is Microsoft Excel. So if you open your Microsoft Excel, and then you go to File, click on File, and then you come to Accounts, scroll down to Accounts. When you click on Accounts, you will see the detail of the program you're using. So for me, what I'm using is Microsoft Office, LTCLC, Professional Plus 2021. So I'm using Microsoft 2021 as I record this program. And so this is where you're going to see the version or the kind of program Microsoft Office you're using. Once you open your Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Word or Microsoft PowerPoint, and you navigate to the file and then click on Accounts, you will see the version you are using. If it is 2007, 2010, 2013, 2016, 2019, 2021, you see the written down for you to see. So that is where you see what kind of Microsoft you are using. But for our program, I've told you to install 2019 or 2021. I hope you've done that. So if you've done that, congrats and welcome to our class. If you couldn't do that within the week, please do try and then install it, because it will help us going forward. Yeah. Okay, so today we're looking at 3 things, but not limited to these 3 things: data collections and preparation. And then we'll be looking at data cleaning and pre-processing. And we'll be looking at data organization using tables and sheets. These are the things we'll be looking at. And then hopefully we'll be able to finish them within time. Good. So we'll start with data collection. Data collection is a process of gathering, measuring, and analyzing data or accurate data from various or relevant, from a variety of relevant sources to find answers to research problems, and then answer relevant, and then to answer questions, evaluate outcomes, and then to forecast events or trends or possibilities. So when we talk about data collection, we are looking at what process, what method, what techniques are we going to use to be able to collect data, to be able to measure the data we are going to collect, and then to be able to analyze them accurately, such that we'll be able to see the relevant things that are inside the data, and such that we'll be able to use this data we have collected to answer certain problems or certain questions that could be arising based on our research or based on the problem we are investigating. And then how can we equally use this data we've collected to be able to make some forecast? How can we use it to make some predictions? How can we use it to give some advice? How can we use it to give help the management make a proper decision? And then what are the probabilities that the data we've collected is going to actually help the organization to increase their return on investment? So when we are looking at data collection, we are looking at all the techniques that is going to help us to collect relevant data from relevant sources. Please, I'm serious about that when I say relevant sources, because if you're looking for data and then you've gone to the wrong sources to collect your data, you actually have data, but then it may not be able to solve the problem you intend solving. So whilst collecting your data, while trying to measure your data, please do ensure that the data you're collecting is coming from the right source. And then once you do that, then you'll be able to be sure that the data you're going to collect will be able to answer the questions that is being presented to you. And then, so that is one thing you're going to do. Now, the next thing is, when we talk about data collections, we're talking about accurate data collection is necessary to make informed business decisions. Why is it important for us to collect data? Because our ultimate goal is that decisions will be made. And then we want to make an informed decision that is based on data, not based on assumptions or based on guesswork. No, we want to make decisions that have quality, that have information, that have backup from data. And then we want to ensure that we have quality assurance, and then we want to keep research integrity. So we want to ensure that what we've done, the work we've done, we've followed the right principles and procedures in doing them. And then as such, everything is right. All right. Thank you. Let me look up on that. Yeah, I think once there's anyone waiting in the waiting room, I should be able to see them. Let me submit all.
I think there's just a couple in the
yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just a minute, please. Let me admit the people joining us. All right. So I think we can continue. I'll look up to admitting some other people as they join. Okay. So as I was trying to explain what data collection is, and then we said that data collection is the process of gathering. One, we're going to gather data. Two, the data we've gathered, we have to measure this data. And then the third thing we do is we have to analyze this data to ensure that the data we've gotten from the right sources are able to answer our research questions, or they're able to answer the problems or solve the problems or the need for which we are getting them or we are gathering them. Yeah, so that is what we do on data collection. Good. Now, and then we are saying, why is it necessary for us to collect data? Why is data collection very important? We said that data collection is necessary because it helps to make informed decisions. If a business is going to make decisions and they'll be sure that their decision is informed, is accurate, is correct, is relevant, then they need data. So that's why we said accurate data collection is necessary to make informed business decisions, ensure quality assurance, and keep research integrity. So if you have intention that, okay, the quality of what we're trying to do, want to keep assuring our staffs, our customers, our clients that we are giving them the very best, then we need data to back it up. If we only want to ensure that the research work we are doing, we have not compromised anything, we need data to show that what we've done, the research integrity is kept, is ensured everything is kept accurately. And then, of course, if we're thinking of business, then we should be thinking that what we are going to put out there, what people are going to see, the things the management are going to consume should be able to help them make informed and right decisions that will increase the productivity of the organization or of the company. So these are what data collection is. And then aside that, the next thing we're going to look at is what are the techniques that we're going to use for data collection? Of course, we know primarily we have two types of data collection. We have the primary data collections, and then we have the secondary data collections. And then, wow, there's a mess up somewhere. So sorry about this. Just a minute, please. What happened here? Okay. Sure. All right. I'm looking at the next. All right. Let me admit certain people. People are still joining us. All right. Please, when you realize someone is joining us, please do prompt me so I'll be able to admit the person. All right. View. And then admit. Yeah. Okay. Now, different methods of data collections. We have primary data collections and we have secondary data collections. Under primary data collections, we said primary data collection involves the collection of original data direct from the source or through direct interaction with the respondents. This method allows researchers or analysts to obtain first-hand information from specific tailored to the research objectives. Of course, if you're going to collect your data from the primary with the primary source, then you have intention of meeting the source. Probably you want to meet the people at their working place, or you want to use different means to get your data from the respondents you are interested on. And of course, when you're going to use primary data collection as a means of collecting data, you are always sure that you're going to meet the right people who are going to give you the right data you need for your analysis. Yeah. And then the next data type you can look at or you can use for your data collection is the secondary data collection. With secondary data collections, you are looking at data involving, secondary data collection involves data using existing data collected by someone. So for the purpose of your analysis, of course, if data has already been collected before and you want to use that data for your analysis, then in that case, you are using what is called secondary data collections. But if that data has not been collected and you want to be the first person to collect the data, then you are using what we call primary data. And then, so that is what we mean by the methods or different ways we can collect data. And then we have the primary data sources where we can collect our data from if you're going to have interest using the primary source of data collections. We'll have the first one, we'll have the survey and then the questionnaires. Of course, we're going to use survey and questionnaires. Then you have to prepare your questionnaires in a sheet. Please let me admit people. Yeah, if you're going to use surveys and questionnaires, then you have to, before the time of your data collections, prepare all the questions, the necessary questions you're going to ask your respondents, and then get them ready before you start going out for your interview or for your questionnaires. Then the next one is if you have interest on interviews, then you're going to go out there yourself. We're going to hire people who are going to help you go out there, ask people certain questions relating to what kind of data you want to collect. And then as you do that, then you'll be able to collect the data you equally want to use. The next is observation. Of course, you know observations. If you're going to use observations to collect your data, it means you go to the field, you join the people in what they're doing, observe them, see how they do it, and then once you participate in what they're doing, then you get the data you need from your correspondents. And then the next one is experiments. With experiments, in that case, you have certain things you want to check, look into, you are trying to analyze this, you're trying to confirm this, you're trying to look at this as you experiment with certain parameters and features of what you have, then you equally collect your data from that point. The next is focused group. With focus group, you are interested in a particular stage or group of people, and as you interact with these people, ask them questions and then perform all the analysis you need to do, that is where you collect your data. So in primary data collections, all these are first-hand informations. Of course, if you're going to do your survey, your questionnaire, it could be online, it could be offline, yeah, but then you have to prepare all the questions and then send them out. If you want to do it over the internet, phone call, you want to do it however you want to do it. Your interviews can be done on phone, it can be done over WhatsApp, it can be done over social medias, you can do it however you want to do. You can do it physically, you can do it remotely, but at the end of the day, you should be able to establish how exactly you want to collect your data from your respondents. And then, of course, observation. If you're going to use the observation, then there's a need for you to be present at the scene or at the place where you're going to collect your data from. Because observation, you have to see what they do, have to experience, have to take part in what they do, and then from there, you'll be able to gather the necessary data that you need. The next is secondary data. And then with secondary data, we're looking at published sources. So if you're looking at, remember we said that secondary data are talking about data that you're trying to use that already has been collected. Another person has already collected that data before, but you still have interest because you feel that that data is going to help you answer the questions you have. And so you could be looking at published sources. If you're looking at published sources, you're looking at books, you're looking at journals, you're looking at other materials that are relevant that can help you answer your questions. Then if you're looking at another one, you're looking at online databases. You could be thinking of what kind of database do I need so that I'll be able to get the data that I need. Then government and institutional records, you could be looking at then some agencies, some companies, what kind of data do they have? Do they have the data that's going to help me answer the question that I have in mind? If that is the case, then you should be able to go to them, ask them questions, and then get the data that you need from them. Yeah, and then a minute, please, let me check the chats. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, please, someone said he's only seeing my blank Excel. Please, can you see my presentation slides? Please, if you can see, please do let me know so that I will know whether I have to share it or the person has to close his own and then join the team again, please.
I can only see your Excel.
Okay, who else again? Same, all right, sorry. All right.
I think it's just sharing
Yeah,
the
I
wrong
have to.
tab.
Yeah, I have to.
So.
Let me share it again. All right, please, can you see the PowerPoint now?
Yeah, thank you, Jude.
All right. All right, so I'm going back to a bit. So under data collections, and then I was saying that under data collections, we'll have two main sources of data collections. We have the primary data collection, and then we'll have the secondary data collections. And under the primary data collections, we are saying that if the data you're trying to collect is coming from direct people, we are going to meet the people that are collecting the data from the first hand, from the respondent themselves. Then in that case, it is what we call primary data. But if the data you are trying to collect is coming from an existing data, then that data is called a secondary data. So that is the difference between primary data and secondary data. So primary data is coming originally from the people themselves, maybe from the original source. If not, you're not getting it from an existing or pre-existing source. But if the data you're collecting is coming from a pre-existing source, then that is what we call secondary data. And so that is the difference between primary data and secondary data. And then under primary data, we said we have different ways of collecting data. If you're going to use the primary data source, we'll have the surveys and then the questionnaires. And then as I said, your survey, your questionnaires is what you can do remotely. You can equally do it, print them on hard copies, send them out there, allow people to fill it, answer their questions. Sometimes it's open-ended, sometimes it's objectives. You just tick and then you answer yes or no, true, false, all that kinds of questions that will answer or allow people help us to answer. And then some other time we can decide to use a different method depending on what we need. Interviews, where we need to hear the people themselves and see what they feel about what we are trying to analyze. Then in that case, it is important to use interviews so that the people answers the questions we have in mind. And of course, in most cases, when we're using interviews, we use open-ended questions, allowing the people to air their views, give us the opinions, tell us what they feel, the understanding about the concept you are trying to ask or analyze. And then based on what they've given to us, we're able to get the data from them and then take it down to the system where we're going to analyze them. Next is observation. With observations, in this case, you say, oh, go down to the people, to the system where they are, join them in what they're trying to do, observe them, watch them do the things, see how it is done, and then record the activities that is going on. In that case, we'll use them mostly when there's a need for us to, maybe when there are some suspicions and then people are not they're not willing to give us informations in terms of questionnaires or in terms of interviews. If they are so concerned that probably their privacy may be at risk, then we could use observation, where we are just there observing them doing the work, or we're observing them doing what they're trying to do without their consent, that we are actually there for data analysis to collect data from them or for any other people. So you can actually join them in doing what they're trying to do. And then from there, we can see what's is really happening. Yeah, so secondary data is for existing data. So when the data is coming from an existing data, then that is what we call secondary data. Yes, we still need to analyze or collect data from secondary data. So let me give you an instance. Let's say, for example, what we are going to do today or subsequent to when you start working as a data analyst, you say that in some cases, in most cases, you won't be the one that will be going out there to collect the data. Let's say a company already have a software, and then the software they have is already getting data for them. So you see, after the data has been captured, you, the data analyst, goes there to fetch data they have from the database. So the data is already existing, and you are going to fetch data before you can now use it to do whatever thing you're trying to use it for. So in that case, it's actually possible. You can collect data from secondary source and then still use it to do your analysis. So yes, it's possible. Good. Now, the next is what we call of course, I've talked about the secondary data. And then these are the sources. Some of the sources we can get the secondary data from. We can get them from online, that is published books. And then with published books, we are talking about, it's possible we can get them from books, we can get them from journals, we can get them from articles, we can get them from magazines and other sources. Online database, we can get them from maybe Oracle, Access, MySQL, Azure, all kind of different kind of databases. They're all there, and then we can get our data from there. Government and then institutional records. Yeah, some organizations still keep manual records. You can still go there and get the data you need from them from their manual process of manual records. So it's possible. You can equally go down to the government and get necessary information. So all the information you need to do your analysis from the government. It is possible. Yes, there are some places that are public where you can go and then you can data have been made available that you can go there and then you can get data from them, like data centers. You can go there. Different countries have their different places where they can get data from. You can get to these places and then request for different kind of data, and then it is possible you can get them. Past research studies, you can look at some past research, what has been done before, and then what are the conclusions that we have made, what is next, what is to be done again. You can look at that and then you can equally get your data from those sources. So it is possible we can get our data from all these sources. And as we get our data, that is the first place. That is the first thing we need to do. Get our data. And then getting your data, get it from the right source. If you're looking for data for healthcare, you don't go to the financial institutions looking for data there. Yeah. The first assignment I'm going to give you is to look up for me on the internet and tell me the places where you get data. So if I'm looking for financial data, where will I get it? If I'm looking for healthcare data, where am I going to get it? If I'm looking for data in relation to different data types, where am I going to get them? Data sets. There are so many of them on the internet, but where do I get my data if I'm looking for my data? So please do have it at the back of your mind, because I'm going to ask you to do that research for me. All right, we'll make our progress. Now, after we've gotten our data from these different data sources, the next thing is, how do we prepare this data? That's the next thing we'll look at. And then in data preparation, we said this is a process of cleaning and transforming these data we've gotten, the raw prior data, to processing and analysis. So when we look at the whole data we've collected and we're trying to prepare them, arrange them, organize them in the way that we can now clean them and transform them from the raw data they are into a means or way that we can use them for analysis, then that is what we're looking at, the preparation. So it is an important step that we need to take in data analysis, because it's going to help us in reformatting our data. It's going to help us to rearrange our data. It's going to help us to prepare the data and then make all corrections that need to be done. And then it equally helps us in combining our data and ensuring that everything is all right. Yes, so if we're going to get the data set correctly, then we need to do data preparation. Because with data preparation, that is where we'll look at the data and we'll be able to properly clean the data, reformat the data, remove the unnecessary things, combine data where we need to combine them, and then ensure that the data is good for analysis. Yeah. Then we'll have different things we need to do in data preparations. One of the things we need to do is to gather the data, that is data collections. That's what we've done at the first phase. And of course, data preparation process begins with finding the right data. That's what we did. Collecting the right data is the first thing we do. After we've collected the data, then the next thing we're going to do is to look into the data and discover what is inside it. Discover and assess the data. This step is about getting to know the data and understanding what has to be done before the data becomes useful in a particular context. So now we've gotten data. Of course, data we've had, we brought them in, and we're now looking at the data. What is it all about? What is the data trying to say? What is it saying? We try to understand the data. And then after we've understood the data, then we can now say, all right, I think the data we've collected can be useful in this means or can be useful in that way. If we look into the data, assess the data, and we've realized that it's not just the best of what we need, then there may be need for us to go back again into data collection where we'll have to try and collect the right data. That's why I said in your data collections, collecting the data from the right source is very important. Yeah, if you're going to collect the data for a company, it's very good you sit down with them, know the objectives, know exactly what they want, and then know the right place to go and look for your data. Don't just say, all right, because I'm going to collect the data, then you collect anything. It's just like a software developer who thinks, I think I know the need of my community, or I think I know the need of the market. And then you go and develop a software without going into the system. You can go to the market and then into the business, the field, the community, or the country, and then asking, interacting with the people what exactly they cannot, even though you've identified the problem, you have identified an issue, it's still important to go and interact with the people. So you'll be able to know exactly what their demand is. How are they viewing that problem you've seen? And then what are their concepts? How are they being trying to solve it? Then based on what they've given you, you can now think of how to make it better, either automating it or creating something that's going to solve that problem if there's no solution existing. If there's already an existing solution, then you should be thinking of how to make it better. So that's why it's important to discover and then assess the data you have. And then in doing that, you get to know the data better and then see how that data can be useful for your analysis. Yeah. Then the next thing you're going to do is you have to transform and enrich the data. In transforming the data, this is the process of updating the format of value and entries in order to reach a well-defined outcome. You see, sometimes you collect data, you have some data, but then you realize that the data I have is not actually in the right format. This is not the format it should be, or this is not the right entries that should be there. So with this transforming of data is where you look at the data and you're trying to see, all right, what can I do? This is not good. This is not good. This is not the right data type. This is not this. This is not this. And they are trying to correct all those things, trying to make them to be what they're actually supposed to be. That is what we'll do on data and transformation. And then under enriching is referring to adding and connecting data with other related information to provide deeper insight. So, all right, I have this, and then as I look at this, is there any connection between this, the data I have, and the question I'm trying to ask? As I look into the data, am I seeing any relationship? Is there any correlation existing? Is there any absence? Is there any discrepancy? What exactly is happening? I think enriching data refers to adding and connecting the data you have with other related information. If there are other information is available, how do I relate them, two of them together, so that I'll be able to get a better understanding, a better insight, and then a more and well-defined information that I'm going to give out there. So that is what enriching tries to help us achieve. Now, we're going to do a practical section now, and then the practical section we're going to do is going to be in 3 sections. We're going to do 3 different things, and then I want to assume that for now we all know how to design Excel files in the sense that you can, of course, create. You know where to enter your data. You know what is a cell, you know what is a column, you know what is a row, and then you know how to enter data inside Excel workbook. So if that is done, the next thing I want to do now is I want us to see how do we bring in data into Excel. Of course, normally what most of us do is what we call open. So you go there and then you click on open and then go to file. Okay, let's just do that practically. I think that'll be better off for us. So we'll be looking at how to import data from different sources into Excel. We'll look at that, then we'll come back and then continue with our presentation. Yeah, so I'm going to share another screen. Right. Yeah, please, can you see my SS screen?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, good. So now this is Excel, and Of course, if you have installed Excel, this is the overview of Excel. And then the top is where we have called the title bar. I'm sure most of us are already familiar with Excel. And then we'll have the tabs, the home tab, insert tab, page layout tab, the formulas, the data, the review, view, and then all other tabs. All these are all tabs. And then within each tab, we'll have what we call a ribbon. A ribbon is a collection of everything within that tab. So when you open a particular tab, from the beginning to the end of that particular tab is what we call a ribbon. And then a group is, if you look at it, you see you have clipboard group. So this is a group. And then you have this equally called font group. And then in that order till you get to the end of the groups. So we'll have them there, groups like that, all going through. And then aside the groups, you see that we'll have some button pointing and arrow pointing down before the end of each of the groups. That arrow is called quick dialog box or dialog box launcher. The dialog box launcher is there for some buttons or some commands that could not be integrated or added for us to see immediately at the group stage. So if you open that particular place, then you're going to see more commands. For example, if I open the one on fonts, you see probably I'm going to see more instructions of what I can do with the font group that are not already available for me to do. So that is about those different groups. So we can always go through them. And then aside that, we have what we call, if you look down there, you're going to see you have where you have maybe, I don't know, if you look at your, maybe it is A1, immediately below the clipboard group, you have where we call A1, and that place is called name box. And then the name box is there for us not to struggle trying to know what is the name of where I am. So if you click anywhere within your Excel file or Excel worksheet, you simply look at that place and you see the name there. So it is called a name box. And then the next one is where we'll have the formula bar. This is our formula. These are formula functions. You have the close, you have the enter, you have the function themselves, and then have where you type in your formula or editing bar. Some people call it formula bar, some call it editing bar. Formula bar because as soon as I start entering any formula inside my Excel, they are visible for me to see here. Editing bar because if I want to do any editing within my Excel file, I'm expected to click on that cell and then come to the formula bar or editing bar and do my necessary editing. You see, the reason is in an event where I've entered some formulas or some values inside an Excel or inside a cell, and then I've realized that I made a mistake and I need to correct my mistake. If I click on that cell and then I attempt changing it, let me say I've entered something like 56, and then I press my enter to the next cell, and I've realized that it's not actually 56. It should have been 50. And then if I click here and then I want to change it to 50, you see, I lose everything. So the best way of doing it is just click on where you have clicked, where you enter the data, and then go to your editing bar. When you come to the editing bar, you can then remove what you don't want, add what you need, and then the data will still be there. It applies to formula. In an event where you've written a formula, sometimes a very long formula, and then you've realized that, oh, within the formula, I've made a mistake, just one mistake. Instead of you clicking there and then losing everything, it's better you click and then go to the editing bar and then you edit your formula. Good. Now, after that, we'll have the next where we'll have A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H to wherever it stopped. And that is what we call column headers. Of course, vertically this way is called columns. This way is called columns. And then horizontally this way is called rows. Yeah, so, and then each, whether it's column or it is a row, it has a header. So A, B, C, D are what we call column headers. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 to where they stopped is what we call row headers. So please do take that into mind so you don't forget. Now, next thing is, if I want to see the end of my Excel, I want to see the last column of my Excel. I want someone to tell me what will be the last column of my Excel. What's the last column? Please, if you know the last column, you tell me. You can unmute yourself or you can write it on the chat. Let me see. Who will tell me the last column of our Excel workbook? What's the last column? You can unmute yourself. I'm hearing you.
Is it Z?
Z. Okay, someone said Z. Another person?
Doesn't it just keep on going to like ZZ, something like that?
ZZ. Okay, another person? What do you think is the last column?
I also think it's ZZ.
ZZ. Okay. Who has something different?
Last column should be maybe 10,000 or 1,000.
Okay. That's okay. Another person who else has something?
XFD. It's appear right here. I got the last column on my Excel.
All right. Someone said is XFD. Okay, that's okay. We'll get there. XFD. All right. Great. Thanks so much for all your contributions. So for us to see the last column of our Excel, you click on, so let's click on the first column, which is A1. If I click on A1, that's first column, first row, the first cell, which is A1, and then I hold my control key on my keyboard. If I hold the control key on my keyboard, and then I press the arrow key to my right, arrow key to the right, if you do that, to take you to the last column of your Excel. And that is like someone suggested, you're actually correct. It is XFD. That is the last column of Excel. So if you want to see the last column of Excel, you just hold down the control key and press your arrow to the right, and then you're going to see it. If I want to come back, I still hold down my control key and press my arrow to the left, and then I come back again to the first column. If I want to see the first row, the last row, I still hold down my control key and then press the arrow down, and then I see the last row of my Excel workbook. So Excel has this number of rows and then that number of columns. So you could see that with this, we have access to our rows and then columns. So this is how we navigate. So if I want to go up, I hold down the control key and I go up. If I want to go right, I hold down the control key and I go left or right, however I want to go, and that will be okay for me. Of course, for you to enter data, you only have to click where you want to enter data, and then you start typing. As you start typing on your keyboard, it starts appearing for you to see, and that is how we enter data inside our Excel. Good. But what we are looking at is, how do we import data? How do we bring in data here from different places? Okay, let's start from, we are going to bring data from another Excel workbook. How do we bring it here? If we want to bring in data from another workbook, what we do is, there's a tab called data. You click on that tab called data. When you click on the tab called data, then the next thing you do is you go to the first group. The first group of the data tab is called Get and Transform Data. Get and Transform Data. When you get to Get and Transform Data, you have a tab there, one of the buttons there called Get Data. You click on Get Data. When you click on Get Data, then you see that we have different sources where you can get data from. You can get data from Excel file. You can get data from database. You can get data from Azure. You can get data from online services like Facebook and other places. You can get data from anywhere, wherever your data is coming from, you can actually get your data from there. So let's start with, if you want to get data from Excel workbook, and then I click on my Excel workbook. I want to get data from Excel workbook. For immediately I do that, then it's going to take me to wherever I have my data. And then when I get to where I have my data, I'll choose the data I want to import. So let's say at this point, my data is already saved. Please, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
All right.
We
Right.
can see.
All right. So my data currently is sitting on my computer and then it's in my downloads. So when I go to click on downloads, I have my data there. Now I want to bring in the data called imports underscore data underscore from another Excel. So I click on that and then I click imports. Now, when I click and then I click on imports, something happens. It starts to establish a connection to that data or that Excel file. When it finishes establishing the connection, it pulls all the data from that Excel book to this place. So currently I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, some number of sheets and some number of tables. Now, if I don't know the content of each of these tables or sheets, what do? I click on them. When I click on them, I'll have an overview of what the data in each of the table looks like on my right-hand side. So you have the other side where you can click on the data by your left-hand side and it gives you the content on the right-hand side. So this is how I can go over and have an overview of the data I have. And then when I finish going over them and I've decided on which tables to bring in, on which sheets to bring in, then I'll select them. Now to select or to bring them in, I have this, there's a tab here called select multiple items. In an event where I want to select more than one item, I can click check that. There's a checkbox button there. When I check that check buttons, you see that the data I brought has all been activated. Now I can select more than one checkbox. I can select another one. I can select another one. I can select again. I can select again, depending on the number of sheets or number of data I want to bring. In an event where I don't want to bring everything, I can decide to just check the ones I need. And when I finish checking the ones I need, now I look down here and you see load, you see transform, and you see cancel. Now load is going to pull the data for us. Transform is going to take the data to where we'll call Excel kitchen. Kitchen is where we do the cleaning. That's where we prepare the data. Make sure that things are done the right way. That is Excel kitchen anyway, but we'll come to that. So first, let's load the data. Now I've clicked on load data and then my data is now being loaded. Of course, everything will load. And once it finishes loading my data, it will create a query and what is called connections on my right-hand side. I have a query and connections there. And then remember, if you look at my screen, you see that the data are being loaded. They're all being loaded now. They have all been loaded. Now, if I hover over any of the data on my right-hand side, I still have a preview of what the data is. But inside my Excel itself, I don't have access to them. So what would I do so that I'll be able to bring in the data from where it is currently to where I want it to be? So what I do is I'll right-click. If I right-click on any of the sheets or tables, I have options of what I can do. I have a lot of options. I have one of the options called copy. I have edits, I have delete, I have rename, I have refresh, I have load, I have duplicate, reference, and all these things. But what I need now is to load. So I click on load. Now, why it didn't display here is because by default, the connection that was made between this data sheet and the other data sheet is what is called only create connection. If you look at my screen, you see that the button that is highlighted or checked is only create connection. If I change it now to table and say now, select how you want to view this data in your workbook. How do I want to view it? I want to view it as a table. If that's what I need, and then I click on select the radio button called table. Then I have another option. Where do you want to put the data? If I want the data to be in this particular worksheet where I am, then I'll leave it there. If I want to create another worksheet, maybe you see, first I have existing worksheets. and second, I have new worksheet. So if I want existing worksheet, then I leave it there. It means it's going to be on this sheet. But if I want a new worksheet, then I have to select new worksheet and then to be done. So let me say I want to leave it in the existing worksheet, and then I say okay. Now when I say okay, it will now leave the connection to the database and pull the data now for me into my Excel workbook. So this is one of the ways we pull data inside our workbook. So you can, of course, any of the tables you want to, if I want to bring in another table again, I'll just right click on it, right click and go to load data. When I load data, I select table. And when I select table, of course, I already selected where I want it to be. And then I say, okay, it's going to load that data again for me. And then when it's finished, the data will be there. If I want to bring in another data, another table again, I click where I want the table to be. I'll go back there again, right click on the table I want and say load data. And then when I say load data, I select tables. And then when I select table, I say, okay. And then the data would be loaded for me. So this is one way of loading our data from an existing Excel file. We already have an Excel file existing and want to load data into our own, the data Excel file I want to work with. This is one way of doing it. Now, but then in certain locations, it will not always be an Excel file we want to load. So if what we want to import is not Excel file, for example, if you go back again to data, and then you go back to get data, you see that I have different data again. I have the other one called from text / CSV. So if what I want to do is I want to bring data from CSV file, maybe a CSV file, that's what I want to bring, or what I want to bring is a text file. What do? I can equally do that. I can bring them in. So what I do is I click on, when I come to my file data, and then I click on get data, I go to text / CSV. And when I go to text / CSV, now what happens is wherever your data is, with the directory where you are, the only data that will be available for you to choose from will be either text or CSV files. So you'll be able to see Excel file here again, because the data type we want to bring in is a type that is either CSV or text file. So if you have access database or data set, you can't see it here. You have a JSON data set, you can't see it here. You have any other kind of data set, PDF, you won't see it here. The only data set you can see is CSV or text file, because the type we selected is text / CSV. So if I do that and then I say, all right, I want to import this guy called Irish CSV, Irish_CSV, and then I say imports. Now, when I click on imports, it's going to start creating a connection again for me. Now, of course, it has created it, and then this is the data set I have. Now, the next thing I'll do is just say load, and then I'm going to load the data, and then the data now has been loaded. Now, unlike what happened when we did Excel file, we said that when we imported Excel file, the file wasn't displaying for us to see. But when you import CSV or text file, you don't need to load data. It automatically loads the data for you inside your Excel workbook. Yes, please, the recording will be made available after the class. Now, so that's what happens with that. So once, depending on the kind of data file you are working with, you may see the data, immediately you load data inside the queries and connection. You may see it in your Excel working environment. But if you don't see it there, then just do what I did before, right? Click on the file and then go to where we'll have load. And then when you go to load to, you select to table, and then you're going to load the data into the table. All right. Now, the next thing is, so that is how we load data, CSV data, we load the text files, we load the Excel files into our Excel workbook for analysis. Now, the next thing we want to look at is, if I want to load the data from the web, it's equally, can we load data from the internet? Assuming our data is not sitting in our computer, it's sitting somewhere on the internet, how do we load that? It's equally possible. So I want to create a new worksheet. By creating a new worksheet, I'm only clicking on this worksheet too. So I'm clicking on another worksheet to create another worksheet. And then I want to go again to data. When I go to data, you see there's a link here called from web. I can click on that. I can still go back to get data. And then when I go to get data, I'm still going to use from web. But then since I already have it here, let me just say, click on get data from web. Now for this purpose, I already have some files I want us to use for it. So let me see if I'll be able to pull it quickly. Just a minute, please. I want to get the data and see how we can be able to use it. Good. No. Please, if you have any question, you have any concern, please, you can raise them. I'm listening to you. I'm available. I can respond to your questions whilst I pick my data from this source. If you have any concern, if you have any question, please do raise them and then I will attend to them. Do you have, is there any question? All right. If you have any question, please do ask. You can unmute yourself and then you ask your question. All right. All right. So I already have this link. I'll send you the materials when we finish the program, and then you have access to all the things I'm using for the demonstration. Now, the URL I'm going to use is, I want to use the basic one because it's going to solve our problem. There's no need going to customize anything for now. And then I want to go to https://en, that's English, /wikipedia.org/wikipedia/FIFA_WordCap. So that's, I want to pull the WordCap data record from Wikipedia. This is online data set, and I want to pull it for us to see how we can equally get data from the internet. It is possible. So what I do is I click on, okay, please, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, great. All right. So once I do that, you see that now it's beginning to create another connection again, linking me again to the internet. And then as soon as it finishes, it's going to pull the data I want from the internet. And then I'm going to use it again, following the same principle of what I've done before. Once the data is here, selecting multiple tables if I want, going over the data or each of the tables to see what they are made up of. And then when I finish, if you look by my right-hand side here, you're going to see again, I have these buttons called view, load, transform, and cancel again. So depending on whichever thing I want to do, I can actually do that. I can load the data, I can take it to transform, and then I can equally cancel it if I don't want to use the data any longer. Yeah, so these are the things we can do, but let's just exercise some patience whilst the data load from the internet for us to do. Now, aside loading the data from the internet, let me quickly walk you through another thing. You can equally load data as well from Excel Access, Microsoft Access, or other database. If I want to load again data from any of those channels, I can see when I go back to my data. Of course, this is not going to allow me to do that. So I have to finish this before to allow me. But if you're not loading data at the moment, and then you have your Excel opened, you can open it, and I'm going to be guiding you how you can equally do that as well. It is possible. If you want to load data from Microsoft's Access, you can do that. If you want to load your data from other database sources, you can equally do that. Correct. Now our data has been loaded from Wikipedia. And then if you look at the folder here, you will see that that is the address that took us to the internet where we downloaded the data. And then each of these are different tables that we have from our download. So let's look at some of them. We have attendance. And then this is the attendance that we'll have. Now, this is data about the World Cup. These are the years that were held. These are the countries that hosted them. These are the venues and the cities. And then these are the attendance and then matches. All the records about that is here. Now, if you go again to World Cup, let's look at a FIFA World Cup. You see, these are FIFA World Cup records. And then if you go to documents, you have documents as well. I'm looking for one. Okay, results. Let's look at results. Good. Now, this is results. And then from results, we'll have, of course, numbering. And then we'll have the year World Cup started, the first World Cup that was played, the country that hosted it, and then who won it. So these are what we have here. So the first World Cup was hosted in 1930, and it was hosted in Bulgaria, and then Bulgaria won it. Second was in 1934. It was in Italy, and then Italy won it. So in that case, until we had the last one, okay, we are still going ahead because 2022 was held in Qatar, and then Argentina won it. And then in 2026, another World Cup will be held in Canada, Mexico, and United States. That's maybe my country will win that, or your country is going to win that. We'll see. All right. So that is a brief history of what happens. And now, if you go over these tables, you're going to be seeing different data from each of the tables. So depending on what the kind of data I'm interested or I'm looking for, when I open it and I have the overview of that data, I may decide, okay, it's one of the data I need. And then I want to bring it inside my data analysis for whatever purpose I want to use it for. If that is what I need, of course, as I scroll down, I'm going to be seeing all the data I need. So when I get the data I need, then I check. Remember, for me to be able to bring the data inside, I have to select multiple items. So I'll be able to select more than one item. And then I can now decide to select the different data I need. And then as I select them, they will all be available for me to then load inside my data, inside my Excel. Now, if I don't want to add a particular one that I've already selected, it's a matter of checking it again. Of course, I checked it, I clicked and it was checked. So uncheck it, and then it will be deactivated or deselected. So I select by checking, and then I unselect by clicking on it again or to deselect it. So when you click, you select. When you click again, it's deselected. Yeah. So this is how I'll do. And then perhaps I've selected the number of tables I want. I just want these two tables to be added for me. And then I click load my data. And then as I click load my data, it's equally going to add them to my existing queries that I already have. And then when it's added there, I will be able to have access to them. Still loading the data from there. Yeah. So that is for that. Then there are so many ways, or another way again of adding our data. Of course, when I share the file with you, you're going to see if you want to add your data using VBA, that you want to write some code, and then using the code, you want to bring in your data. It's equally possible you can use that method to bring it. And then if you want to do that, simply press Control and F11. I think that's because this guy is still loading. So when you press F and Shift and then Control 11 on your keyboard, I'm sure it's going to bring the VB interface for you, where you can enter the codes that's going to allow you to pull data sources from different sources, and then that data will be added for you here. Then the next thing is, if you want to add data from, remember, today, my primary interest is we should be able to know how to add data from different sources, so that wherever your data is located, you should be able to have access to them and then load them inside your Microsoft Excel, because that's very important. Once your data is loaded inside Microsoft Excel, the next of the things you're going to be doing would be not so much difficult. I'm hearing you, please.
Jude, you said Control F11 or Control Shift F11?
Shift F11, please.
Shift F11.
Yeah. So I'm going to, my own finish, I'm going to try that as well. All right. Now, when you want to connect to some database, sometimes there is a need for us to install a third-party library that's going to help us to establish a connection. You see, each of the data we imported here, we have always established a connection. You see, it connects and then it pulls the data for us. So in the case where we want to pull in data from another source, again, let's say I want to pull data from databases. I want to pull it either from SQL server or Access database or MySQL database or Oracle database, then or Postgres. In these cases, we need to install some extensions. That extension is going to help us establish a connection to that database, and then we'll be able to connect to that database. Of course, the things we need to do to be able to connect to the database are, one of them is we need to know the address or the location of the database. Where is the database located? Then after that, you need to know what is the username to that database, what is the password to that database, and then what is the name of the database you want to connect to. So these are the 4 things you need to be able to connect to any database. So any database you want to connect to, and then you provide this 4 different things, you're going to have access to that. Okay, so please, if the database is on SharePoint with restricted access, will Excel still be able to extract data? No, please. If there are restricted access to the database, you need to get the right permission, have the right, of course, if you get the right permission, you'll be able to get the data you need. Of course, depending on the permission you've been granted, that is how you're going to work. If you have been denied the privilege of getting data from the database, only viewing, then it means you can't actually pull data from the database. But as a data analyst, one of the things you're going to have, one of the requirements they're going to give you, or privilege you're going to have, is ability to pull data, write to data, and then, of course, you should be able to make changes to data. So you should be able to do that, of course, but you shouldn't be able to change data that will affect the whole company as well. Yeah, but they will definitely not deny you that access because you need it to work. So once you need it, once you need to connect to database and you ask questions, they're going to provide you with all the necessary things you need to be able to connect to the database. All right, so as I was saying, if I want to connect to Microsoft's MySQL database and I click on it, you see it's telling me this connector requires 1 or more additional components to be installed before it can be used. So there's a component we need to install, and then once we install that component, we'll be able to do that. And then how do I get access to that component I need to install? Of course, when I click on more and then I come to the internet, it's going to do that for me. But for now, I don't really need to install that because I don't need to connect to MySQL database. But from here, when you open each of these tabs, you're going to see how to connect. If you need an extension or something, a software to be installed before you be able to connect to a particular database, all the database will have in Excel are all here, and then how you can connect to them. When you open each of them, is going to take you to where you download the necessary files you need, and then you'll be able to connect to them. We don't have to work on an online Excel if we have access, right? Okay, well, it depends on where your database is. Let's say if you're working for a company that's using online services, let's say they're using Amazon, or they're using Google or Azure as their data storage. So they're using the cloud for their data storage. Definitely you're going to need internet. You're going to be working online. So the data you'll be pulling, you have to have internet access to be able to pull your data. So it should be online before you can be able to pull your data from those data sources. Yes, but if you are working locally and then your data is within your organization and maybe your local organization, and then even though you have a network, you don't have internet, you still need to connect to the database to be able to pull them. But in that case, you may not need internet service to be able to connect it. But if your data is located outside your facility, outside the organization, it is hosted by a third-party company or organization, then in that case, you need internet. You need to be online so that you'll be able to connect to the database and then pull the data from whichever source your data is. Yeah, so that is for that. I don't know if I answered your question, please. All right. Going back again, sorry, left my screen because I wanted to explain something for us to understand. All right. So back again, and then We are still on Excel. All right, so that is how we can, the different ways we can connect and then pull our data from wherever source our data is located. And then when we do that, we should be fine working with it. I'm trying to have opened my macro, but then I don't know, it's hanging somewhere. My Excel is hanging, my macro is somewhere hanging. Trying to see where it is so that I can pull it for you to see how they, okay, but when I send you the file, you're equally going to see how to do, there's a file there, there's an example of how you can equally connect and pull your data if you want to use VB to pull your data from your any source where your data is located. So quickly, let's continue with our data program for the day. So these are different ways we can pull data into our Excel workbook. Now, the next thing we want to look at is after we've put data here, what next do we do? That is the next thing we want to look at. So let me pull this data again, and then say this, load this, and then attendance. I should load this. I want to load a data again inside my screen sharing starts. Share the screen. Please, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can still see the Excel you're working on.
Which of them are you seeing? The current one or the one I was working on?
This one's blank.
This one is blank, correct. All right, so I wanted to be sure the one you're seeing. All right, so I want to pull the data again here, and then we'll start the next thing. The next thing is cleaning. What do we do when we want to clean the data? So that's the next thing we want to look at. So I want to pull another data here, and then we're going to use it to look at what we do when we'll talk about data cleaning. So let me still pull CSV files, and then we'll look at what next to do on data cleaning. All right, so I'm going to downloads, and then I want to look at a different data. Okay, all right, no problem. All right, so I'm playing the data here, and then good. So this is the data I have. Now I want to load the data. Good. Now I've loaded my data inside my Excel workbook. Now, the next thing I will start asking myself is, I look at the data. Remember, under data pre-processing, we said under data pre-processing, you look at the data and then try to understand the data. Look at the data and try to see, is this data the right data I need? Is it in the right shape? Is it what exactly I want it to be? What are the things I need to look at whilst looking at my data? All right, so for example, let me say I'm starting this way. All right, so I set the assignment I said is, I want you to make research for me. Where do we get data from? If I need different data, like I want to do analysis on financial calculation, where will I get data on that issue? If I want to do analysis based on health related issue, where will I get that on that? If I want to get data related to fraud, where will I get data, that kind of data from? So I want you to make research for me over the internet and get me the different sources where we can actually get data from. That is what the assignment, the first assignment is. Of course, it's a discussional data. All right, so this is one of them. Kaggle is one of them, but that's not all. There are other places as well. Yeah, so I want to see more than one. All right, thank you. Now, so we are here now, and to start our data cleaning, what we need to do is we need to load this data into our Power Query where we perform the data cleaning. And then if once we do that, then we should be fine, and then know that there we're going to do everything we need to do. All right, and then to do that, I double click on the data I have. Once I double click on that data at my right hand side, that's the data that is here. The data that is here. I double click on the data here, and then it will be loaded into another environment. So this environment is what we call Power Query. This is where we perform data cleaning. So if you want to perform data cleaning on Excel, this is where it is done. So here you have access to every bit of your record of your data. And at this point, we'll have some certain things here. If you look at my right-hand side, I have query settings, and I have probability properties. I have applied steps. So every step I take will be recorded for me here under applied step. And then at each point in time, I can always go back to the previous step, or I can maintain my already existing step. So I have the ability to move forward. I have the ability to go back. If I've done something and I'm not sure of what I've done, I want to go back to where I have access to the original data, then I can still do that. But please, one thing more, before I forget, before you start your data analysis, once you extract your data and then you have your data, please do make a copy of your data. Don't just pull your data and start working on it. Please make a copy of your data and then have a copy of it. Then work with a different copy. That is very important, so that if there's anything that happens to the data, you still have access to the original data, and you can still make a reference to the original data for any corrections. All right, there's a question here. It says, if you have the appropriate access rights to the shared Power site and the database within it, you should be able to extract data from into Excel as if it is not an online file. Okay. However, I think it's an answer to your already asked question. Thanks so much for the assistance. All right. So from here now, we'll have our data sets in this place. Now, what I can look at is, maybe I look at this column, checking status. Maybe if I look at this column and then I've seen that I may not need this column for my analysis. Maybe I don't really need it for anything. Then I can decide, all right, maybe I have to take it off. I don't need it. Maybe I'll take it away. Now, maybe there are other columns as well that I don't need. Maybe there are some empty columns that I need to get rid of. I look at those empty columns and then I get rid of them. If there are some empty rows too that I'm seeing within my data and I need to get rid of them, then I start thinking of how to get rid of those empty columns, empty rows. Now that is one. Secondly, so let's say if that is what I want to do, now I can right click on this column and I say remove column. If I say remove, it's going to remove the selected column for me. If I say remove other columns, it means it will keep the one I have and remove the rest of the columns. If I say duplicate, it means it's going to duplicate this column for me. So depending on what I want to do, I have a lot of things I can use here to get my work done. If I don't want to use these shortcuts, I can still go back, click on the cell, the column I want. And when you look up, you see that I have manage columns. Under manage columns, I have choose columns. If you open choose columns, choose columns is going to help you choose the different columns you want to use for your analysis. So if I don't want to use the whole columns I have in my table to do my analysis, I want to select some columns and I click on choose columns. It's going to allow me to be able to choose or select from the number of columns I have. You see, once I click on choose columns, I now have access to all the columns I have within that particular table. Now, from here, I can decide anyone I uncheck will not be part of my table again. So if I uncheck everything and then I begin to check one at a time, maybe say I'm checking duration, I'm checking credit history, and then I'm checking a credit amounts, and I'm checking a saving status, and then I'm checking employment. All right. So and then let's say these are the 4 things or 5 things I need for my data analysis. If that is what I need, when I select them, that is choosing column. So I'm choosing what I need for my analysis, and then I say okay. Then it means it's going to restrict my work to just this number of columns I have chosen. Now, if you look again under the apply steps, you see that removed other columns is now there. So I've added a step because of what I did. Now, if I want to go back to the previous step, I can click on change type. If I click on change type, then I'm going to, or I can simply close it from here. If I click on this cancel, then my data is restored back again for me. So depending on what I want to do, I can actually do that. Now I have choose, that is where I want to choose. Then I actually have another option there. I have remove columns. So if I want to remove columns, I can equally click on remove columns, and it's going to load the number of columns for me again. Of course, these are the columns I have. I can decide which one to remove. You see, when I click remove columns, the other columns was removed, and that column that's removed has been added for me here. So if you look on my right, you see that a step has been added, removed columns. So if I click on it again and restore it, you see it is restored back. So these are how we can actually remove columns that we think we don't need, or we can select from the numerous columns we have. We don't want to be clicking remove this, remove this, remove this, remove. You just want to select the number of columns you need. Then in that case, you go to choose the columns you need, and then you from there select the columns you need. In an event where you need to, maybe you are working with, you want to remove some rows or want to keep some rows, this is equally where you can use it. The next one is keep rows, and then next one is remove rows. So you can use, this is an environment that gives us access to properly remove or do anything we want to do to our data. Now, from here, if you look at this Power Query, we'll have home, you have transform, you have add columns, and then you have view. Now, from this place called homes, you can manage your columns, you can manage your rows, you can even go to transform, which we are going to open very soon. You can do combines. You want to combine queries or append queries, you can do that. And then some other things you can do. Let's look at transform. When I get to transform, I equally have a lot of things I can do from transform. From transform, I can group data. I can decide, okay, maybe the first row of what I have is not the header of my columns, and I want to make it the header of the columns. You see, use first row as headers. So if what I have as the headers is not what should be, but I want to use that one as a header, then I can do it. But originally, from what we have here currently, the first row is our header. But in an event where that was not the header, then we could have equally done that. Yeah, we could have done that, and then we would have been able to have access to it. So in an event, so let's say I want to select the next one, this role. If I select this role, for example, and I say, I want to make this role my first, the heading of my work. And then I say, use first role as header. Let me click on that. I say, use first role as header. You see, we have use header as first row. So if where your header is not the first row, you can actually instruct this place to use that place as the header. And then if where you are, the first row is your header, but that is not what is used as header, you can tell the system use this role as the header. So you can actually do that. It's possible, and then you will be fine if you do that. Now, we'll have the next one there too. We'll have a whole lot of things we can do there. We'll have splits. You have any columns. You have text to columns, and an event where you want to extract some details, some data from your Excel, you can actually use here. Please, the whole thing about data cleaning, you are still going to do it when we'll be doing dashboard. But what I'm trying to give you today is an overview of what we can do when we are doing dashboard. So we're still going to use here to do our data cleaning properly when we get to that stage. But I need to introduce you to that because today we equally had data cleaning as part of what we need to do. All right. So, and then of course, data cleaning is either we're removing the data, we're adding something to it, or we are trying to format it to, okay, in that case, let's say in an event where I have a column and then I've realized that that column is not actually in the right data type. So let's say that the column, let me look for one. Right, good. So I have duration. And of course, if you look at duration, you see that it is 1, 2, 3. That means it is numeric. But assuming it was not numeric and I want to change it to numeric, that is where we'll bring in different data type. So if you look at each of these columns, you see that they have their own data type on top of them. So you see, if it is numerics, you see 1, 2, 3 on top of, or the top of the head. If it is text, you see ABC on it. So that is how you look at them. And then let's say if I have a dates, I'm seeing if I have dates somewhere here. I don't know if I have dates. Okay, I don't have dates. All right. So if I had dates here, maybe I would have see if that is correct. All right. Now I have this place where, if you look at again, there's where we'll have a text columns. Under text columns, we'll have what is called formats. So let me open that place and explain a bit to you. Under there, we'll have lowercase, uppercase, capitalize each word, trim, clean, add prefix, and then add suffix. So of course, if what I want to do, I want to convert a particular column to become uppercase, then I just go there and I say, turn the whole thing to uppercase, and it's going to turn them to uppercase. If what I want to do is I just want to go there and then capitalize every word, each word, I go there and then I say, I want you to use capitalize each word. It's going to do that. If what I want to do there is I want to trim, I can go there and say, I want to trim the word I have there. It's going to trim it. So now, when you look, remember, each step I've taken is recorded for me on my applied step, and I can always go back if I need to do that. So don't forget that. So when you get stuck somewhere and you don't exactly know what you've done, or you are confused of what you've done, remember, you can always take a step backward and you'll be safe, or you'll be fine. All right. So that is about that. Now, aside that too, we should also be able to manage our different data types. So if I want to manage different data types that I have, okay, let me look at duplicate as well before we leave there, because that is another thing we're going to be looking at when we look at data cleaning. You look at, do we have duplicates? If I have duplicates, how do I deal with the duplicates? 2, do I have some missing values? If I have some missing values, how do I deal with it? Thirdly, I could be looking at the data type I have. Are they the right data types that I have? If they're not the right data types, and then how do I correct them to get to the type of data types they should be? So these are the things we look at now. From this particular place where I am, under Home tab, if you look at Transform Group, you see that we'll have data type, and depending on the column you select, when you select a particular column and then you look at that place, data type, you see it will tell you what type of data type that is there. For example, I've selected on duration, and when I select duration, if I look there, you see that I have whole numbers. Now, if I select on credit history and I look at it, it is called text. If I select another one, purpose, and I look at it, it is called text. Now, if I select on credit amount and I look at it, it's called whole number. So depending on what I've selected, it will actually tell me the data type I am using. Now, if the data type there is not the right data type and I want to change it to another data type, what I will do is I will open that place and then select the right data type that I need or I want that column to be. So that is how we can change the data types in an event where we see that the data type they've included is not actually the data type that should be there. Then we can actually use this means or this method to change them. So for example, we need the decimal numbers and then probably what they're giving us like the credit card, the credit amount. Assuming the credit amount was actually supposed to be decimal numbers, but then they've used whole numbers. So what I would have done is I'll click on credit amount and then I come to, instead of using whole numbers, I'll use decimal numbers. And when I use decimal numbers, it's going to work on it and it's going to convert to decimal numbers. If you check, you see that my type has been changed. You see, change type. So of course, it's now decimal numbers. I'm not seeing decimals because I've not included the number of decimal places I need to have. So if I include the number of decimal places I need to have on my data, then it will apply it to them. But for now, because they're all whole numbers, that is why we are seeing them as whole numbers. Yeah, so that is how we work on the overview of what we'll be doing. This and more things are the things we'll be doing when we get to data cleaning. All right, so please, if you don't have any question, please do raise your questions so that I'll be able to address them whilst we continue with our class. Good. Now, when we finish everything we want to do with this place, assuming I'm done, my cleaning, everything is now all right, the way I want it to be, then I come to close and load. Now, please do note, once you bring in data inside this Power Query, you see, underneath the first rule, I have green light. My line is green, all through, they are green. It tells you the percentage of validity of your data. If we point, if you see, I'm pointing my cursor on that particular arrow, the line there, green, and it's telling me that, okay, this is the column called duration. That's the name of that column. And then it's telling me errors. The percentage error I have on that particular column is 0. The percentage number of empty cells I have is 0. So it's going to run through and give me everything detail I need about that particular data. So when you bring in your data here, it will tell you a summary of everything about your data. And then you know exactly, these are the things I need to fix. These are the things I need to work on. And then you'll be okay working with them. Hopefully, when we're going to do that dashboard, we'll be bringing in data that has a lot of mess, that is not in the right sense. And then we're going to bring them here, see how they look, work on them, transform them, and then use them. You see how it looks when we finish it, before the transformation, after we finish transformation, and then when we're loading them back into our Excel file. So when we finish our transformation here, then we click on close and load. So you come to close and load. When you close and load, then it loads the whole data back again for us. Now we are sure that everything's okay, and then our data will be loaded back for us. So that is brief overview of what data cleaning is going to look like. But of course, there are so many other things we're going to do, or more things we need to add to that. We're not going to be limited to that because there are some other things we need to do when it comes to data cleaning. All right, so I'll quickly go back to our PowerPoint and see if we'll be able to finish our presentation on that, and then we'll come back and then entertain some questions from our class. So remember, please, if you have questions, do ask them as we go on. You can unmute yourself and ask, or you can write it on the chats. I'm going to attend to them as we go on. So I just showed you how I can bring in data from different places. And then please, can you see my screen, my PowerPoint presentation?
Yeah, we're back on
Yes,
the
please.
All right, all right. So please don't worry about my PowerPoint. Is that I don't have pictures. All those things have been included on the file I'll be sending to you. I just wanted to make this to be somehow brief. When you get the documents, you're going to see everything you need to do. Steps on how you're going to use all the things you are doing are equally there. So it's self-explanatory, and then it's easy for you to understand. If you have any question or any concern as you get the material, please do raise concern. Reach out to me. I'll be available to help you out. Thank you so much. All right. So of course, we've seen how to import data. We can import data if you want to import text files or Excel file or database or anything from the internet. We'll see how we can do that. You go to data tab and then go to get data. From there, you go to file. From file, you go to text file from this or CSV file, wherever it is. Then go to where that data is, your directory, where the data is. Your downloads, documents, desktop, wherever the data is, you go there, select the data, and then you can load the data inside your Excel. And then we've looked at data cleaning. When you import, you're going to do data cleaning. It's taking data from the right normal place where you are taking it to Power Query. And then Power Query is where you are more, it's easier for us there to work on data. We'll have access to every tool we need to use when it comes to cleaning data, changing it to the right data type, removing columns that we don't need, removing the rows we don't need, or selecting exactly what we need. Anything you feel like doing is easy for us to do them when we get down to where we call data query, PowerPoint query. So the Power Query, that's Power Query. When we get there, everything is easy for us to do that. So data cleaning is the process of adding missing data. Could be looking at missing data, could be correcting data, could be repairing data, could be removing incorrect or irrelevant data from our data set. So these are the things we could be looking at. It's either we're looking at how do we handle missing data, could be looking at how do we correct some data that are not correct, they are not in their right data types. We could be looking at how do we repair some data missing. So we could be thinking of how do we remove, we have excess data, we don't need to use all of them, we need some of them. How do we remove the ones we don't need? And how do we select the ones we need? And then irrelevant data, some of them are not important for analysis. How do we get rid of them? So all these things are the things we look at when we are talking about data cleaning. And then of course, it is one of the most important things we need to do when it comes to pre-processing. And then as a data analyst, we've been actually told that 70% of your time, you're going to spend them in data cleaning. So bringing the data into the database is equally good, but then where your more time is going to be invested on is on data cleaning, because you must make sure that the right data is selected. The data is neat, is able to answer the question you are trying to resolve. So it's very important. So data cleaning is one of the important places or places that are going to take your time. So when you get to data cleaning, please do be patient, do the things, do the right thing. Don't assume anything, please. Don't say, okay, I think this is okay. No, don't think, do it. Let the data tell you it is okay. And then you're going to see that once everything is okay, you see that all the lines will be green. The top layer will show you that yes, everything is in correct order. And then you can now proceed to other things you need to do. So depending on the kind of data you are working with, there are a number of possible cleanliness or things you need to do. So it depends on the kind of data you are working with. You could be looking at missing data. You could be looking at removing unwanted rows and columns. You could be looking at removing URLs, symbols, emojis. These are the things. You could be looking at removing HTML tags. You could be looking at correcting data types. You could be looking at removing blanks between words. You could be looking at removing duplicates. There's so many things you could be looking at. So removing all these things and trying to, you could be looking at maybe there are some colors, unnecessary colors, formattings that have been integrated or added to your data. You don't need them, that's shouting. You need to remove some of those things. You could be looking at the data types of maybe the way the data they're entering, the consistency of the data. Is it that some here they're capital letters, some are small letters, some are sentence case? You could be looking at all those things and seeing how do we correct all these things. So these are some of the things you'll be looking at when it comes to data cleaning. And then at the end of the day, we are looking at the next thing is data organization. So when you finish all these things, what next do? We need to ensure that the data we are working with Now, at the end of the day, we have consistency. So consistency here means if the data type is text, it should be text. If it is text here, the other side should be text as well. Consistency equally means if I'm using sentence case, it should be sentence case all true. Not that some place is sentence case, other place is small letters, another place is capital letters or caps. No, upper cases. No, it should be uniform. It should be consistent on what the kind of what I'm going to collect. Again, consistency equally means if I want to, let's say I'm going to collect data about gender, and then I'm saying male. If I want to collect male, I shouldn't use some male and then some M. No, I should be consistent. If I want to use abbreviation, I should use abbreviation. If I want to use the full name, I should use the full name. So while collecting the data, I should ensure, remember, sometimes you will not be the one who has collected the data, but when you are doing the data cleaning, you should ensure that there's a consistency in these things. So that's what we're looking at. Consistency equally means if I am saying I need a decimal place, then the decimal place should be consistent. Not that here I have 2 decimal places, that place I have 3 decimal places, another place I don't even have a decimal place. No, they should be consistent in that event. Yeah, so that is what we mean by consistency. Then the next thing is we should choose good names for things. Now, when we're talking about good names for things, you see the headings, the column heads, we are going to type the name or what we call variables. You will type the variable that are going to hold the various data you're going to collect. There should be something that is easy to understand. Let's say I want to collect data about people, and then I need certain variables, their first name, their last name, their email address, their contact, their address or country. And then if I'm going to collect those things, and when I'm going to use my variables, if I'm going to use first name, I shouldn't say F and then leave it like that. For me, or FN. If I do it FN, maybe myself, I will know it's FN, but the person who is going to use it will hit the person at a glance, at first instance, know that this means first name. It's possible some may know, some may not know. So for us to avoid confusion, we should use names that are good and easy to understand. Descriptive, telling the people exactly what you want them to do. That's what we mean by choose good names. So choose names that is easy to tell people the kind of data you want them to provide. If you give them, let's say I want to collect age and I've asked you age, it's easy for you to understand I'm asking for your age. Yeah, but if I'm asking for age and then I've added AG. Yeah, possibly I've used this as an abbreviation, but would the people understand that what I mean, what I want them to enter here is age? You see that in such instance, it's possible that a lot of people may skip it because they wouldn't understand what exactly they are required to do at that particular column. So please do ensure that on each column, you've actually used the right name so that it will be descriptive. Now, the next thing is when you're going to write dates, please do follow the syntax: year, month, and day. Follow it consistent. Don't go someplace and then you're doing day, month, year, and then another place you're doing month, day, year, and then next place you're doing year, month, day. No, don't do. Be consistent. Be consistent in your date and your dates formatting, because when you go to Excel actually goes the same principle. Excel says go the year first, go the second should be month, and then the third variable should be the day. So still maintain the same thing. Now, aside that, please do ensure that when you finish your data cleaning, you don't have empty cells. You should be able to point on each of the columns, and then you see that you don't have empty cells existing on any of them. It's very important. Yes. And then please do equally ensure that you have just one data in a cell. Please don't have 2 data in one cell, except where it is important. Let's say something like a column that is a column that is called description. Maybe you're trying to give an explanation, a comment. In that case, there's no problem. You can have multiple things inside that cell. But if it is a place where your data you need to collect are unique, please do ensure you collect unique data for each cell. It's very important because it's going to help you going forward. And then again, make sure you have a rectangular event data at the end of the day. Please don't let your table, of course, if you check most of the Excel data files, you see that they're always in rectangular data format. So you hardly will see an Excel file that is not in a rectangular data format. So please do equally ensure that whilst collecting or formatting your data, cleaning your data, you always stick to that principle that when you finish, you should be able to have a good looking data type or the Excel file. And then when you do that, we should be fine going forward. All right, so so far I'll be attending to your questions now, and then before we'll see the next thing that's available for me to take you through, but let me attend to your questions.
Thank you for that, Jude.
Yeah, so please, I'm listening to your questions. You can type, you can unmute yourself and ask your questions. If you have questions, please do ask. You can unmute yourself and ask your questions.
I think all the questions will be recurring and coming in after we put this into trial. I think this is where the actual moments of questioning and giving questions, and we will request feedback from you and some guidance.
Okay. Okay.
I was going to say, if anybody does have anything they want to cover after the session finishes, then of course you've got Connect, so you can use the group to post questions. You can obviously talk to one another about it as well, and we'll be in communication around the courses every Tuesday as well.
All right, so that'll be great. So I'll be checking on Connect, and then I wish you post your questions there. The things you don't understand from the materials I'm going to send to you, please do feel free to reach out and then let me know so that I'll be able to address them, and that'll be good. All right, so what are the challenges we are likely to encounter during cleaning process, and how can they be addressed? All right, so when you start your data cleaning, some of the things, of course, because we're using Excel, it's actually very easy for us to interact with. Maybe the only thing that may be difficult for us is maybe trying to get used to the tools where they are. It could be finding it difficult. I want to do this. Where do I get the button to do it? I want to do this. How do I do it? Maybe like when I wanted to do trim, maybe when I do trim, what exactly is trim going to be? Now say clean. What's clean going to do? So maybe these are some of the things we may not exactly know what's at the particular points. The tool, you know what to do, but where the tool you need to use is located could be one of the challenge. But as soon as you start working with Power Query and start getting used to them, getting used to know where the tools are in a short time or short while, you'll be fine working with anything, doing anything you want to do without stress. So the only challenge I think you're going to have as a beginner is trying to identify the tools that are available for us to use in data cleaning. That's aside that, I don't think there's another thing you're going to do, because all the tools we need are actually there for us to use. Yes. All right, so thank you. Yeah, that is correct. So I'll be uploading the documents and then some Excel files too for you to use. If you have your own data, you can equally use your data. You mustn't use mine to practice. Yeah, but then what I would want you to do for me is, please, when you import your data, take a screenshot of how you import the data into your Excel and let me see, please. That's one of the things I want you to do for me. Yeah. So when you import your data, I want to see a screenshot of how you've imported the data, and then that will actually show me that yeah, you're able to do it correctly. Because I wouldn't want you to use open, where people just click and then you say open and then the data comes. Because if you use open, then you're not going to be able to import your data into Power Query. Open, if you use, let me go back there and show you that what I mean. Let me go to Excel. And then if I come here, this is my Excel file. If I close this, and then instead of going to data and then importing my data, if I go to file and I say open, and then I come to wherever my data is located. Let me go to my downloads, and then I import my data. I click on that file and then I say open. You see, my data is actually going to be in a different format, not what my Excel file, my data pre-processing data needs. So this is how my data will be. And that is how, this is not how it should be. So if you use open, if you go to file and you say open to bring in your data, please, it will not be the same thing. From here, I can't import this data to my Power Query. It will be another work. So, but for me to easily do that, I just have to go to my data and then use get data from any source, and it's going to import the data for me. So please, when I'm going to do that, I will prefer you and I want you to use data, import your data from whichever source your data is, and then into your Power Query, so that it will be easy for you when you want to do anything on it. Yeah, so I think that is how that will be. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I'm grateful for the time, and then I hope I'll be sending the documents for us to have access to, and then I'll be expecting your questions and your comments, and then we'll be seeing how we'll move forward from that area or section. Thanks so much for your attendance today. Those who couldn't join us early, please do try next week to join us early, so that we'll be able to have good time together. If you are early to class, I think it's going to help us to finish early and then have some time to interact. And then maybe you can have like 10 minutes or 15 minutes after the class, and then we can do some offline online connects and go to connect, and then we can equally do some group discussions and chat there before we eventually leave. Or we can even come early and then we can do some connects and then establish some relationships and connection before the class even starts in full. So I encourage you to please join the class early, and then it will be nice meeting you. Thanks so much for attending the class today. I'm still Jude from OpenLabs Ghana. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude.
so much, Jude.
Thank you very much, Jude.
Thank
See you next week.
Thank you, Jude.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.